Thank you very much for the introduction. Before I joined the City of Munich, I was for 7 years part of the team, Chair of Geoinformatics under supervision of Professor Kolbe. And part of my research was to look at different data infrastructure solutions for the smart cities and understand what are the pitfalls, why these solutions are not enough. So special data infrastructure as an example. And what I realized through this study was that many of these solutions are focusing on the supply. So what is the technology, what it can offer, and not that much focusing on the demand side. And when I joined the City of Munich, what was quite interesting for me for the digital twin was that it's exactly other way around. So it looks at the use cases, what are the requirements, what needs to happen, what need digital twin to offer for these use cases to achieve their goals. So I start with a short background when and how we started the digital twin in Munich. Before 2018, we had several smart cities projects, and we were not involved in all of those projects, but we've heard very often that a digital replica is missing. And I'm not talking about data sets, but the integration of these data sets in order to represent part of the reality. And it was for us in 2018 a motivation to start Digital Twin Munich project funded by Ministry of Digital and Transport. And we continued with other projects. We've heard Ascend, it's a project that we are also involved, and the project Connected Urban Twins, which is my project in the City of Munich, and we are working there together with two partner cities, Leipzig and Hamburg, in order to expand to build our digital twin or urban data platform. And the results that we got through especially project Digital Twin Munich was so successful that the City Council elevated the project as the permanent task of Geodata Service Munich, and also called Digital Twin Munich as the digital infrastructure for climate neutral city. It was quite a responsibility for us. So we started thinking not only from the technical perspective, but rather what it means from the strategical, from organizational perspective for us in the city. And one of the key focus of us in this project, in this Digital Twin Munich, so more than the project, was the answer to the question whether we can develop a fundamental data for digital twin. So there are, dependent on the use cases, that have specific data, thematic data, but can we really develop some kind of fundamental data which are common amongst various use cases? And I will focus in my presentation on these two topics, data and use cases, but beforehand I want to, when I go to the next slide, yes, I want to explain what we understand. I'm not going to give any definition. We've heard some definitions today, but how we understand and what is digital twin for us in Munich. What we see here are three pillars: the data, and I'm not talking about the individual data, but this integration of the information data in order to represent the reality. Of course, we want to, at the second pillar, we want to do something with this data. Either we want to understand what's going on at the moment in the city, part of the city, or we want to test different scenarios, what fits better for what we aim for the city. The third pillar, which is quite important, is that we are not building digital twin for the sake of being cool. We have purpose, so it is very important. We are going from the use cases and we see what are the requirements, what are the goals that we want to achieve, and then dependent on these requirements, we build our digital twins for different use cases. So it's quite important to understand the purpose is to improve something in the city, to improve the well-being, the quality of life in the cities. And of course, whatever will be changed in the reality should be mirrored, should be transferred again into this digital world. One more point here is this two parentheses, 3D. What we realized through different use cases that we received in previous years was that we don't necessarily need for all use cases 3D data. That's completely enough to work with 2D data. So we don't have this perception that having a 3D city model is on its own a digital twin for Munich. But we should look at the use cases and see what are the requirements. So, going back, okay. So what are the fundamental data, how we understand? I have some examples, of course these are not all the examples we have in Munich, but the important things that at the moment are running and we are developing. I said that 3D is not always what we need for all the use cases, but we do love 3D data. So we have our aerial photography every 2 years in Munich. And out of this aerial photography, we have different products. So 3D mesh is a very nice 3D model. We have aerial images with the resolutions up to 5 centimeters with good resolutions. But what we realized through our different use cases, our work in digital twin, was that, what's the problem with the laser? Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Is that the digital twin means that we are representing the reality, so what's happening at the moment. So we realize for some use cases it's not enough to have even yearly aerial images or 3D models. So we really need to do for specific part of the city temporal update of the data, and the solution we offer is that we have our own drone, so the colleagues who have license to fly with these drones and capture part of the city that we require. And what you see here is the example for Oktoberfest for the last year, and was the request from the fire department to gather this information. They needed to know where are the tents, where are the different facilities we have for this event. And last spring, we went one step forward because it wasn't enough for the fire department for a spring festival just to have the area from top. They wanted to look at every details also from the ground. So we integrated our mapping bike photography to this drone information for the purposes of like practicing different emergency preparation. So they needed to also know about the entrance, how wide are these entrance, and do different scenarios. Another database, another fundamental data that we have is the building and housing register. This is one task that we have from Connected Urban Twins project. And in Munich, the situation is that we have lots of use cases where we need the building information. And the building information in Munich are held by 5-6 different departments, and they are offering different types of information about the buildings, and they are structured in the heterogeneous way. So it's quite a challenge for those people who want only work with 2 of these data sets. And the idea with this building and housing register model is that we develop a model, a uniform model, where we can integrate all of this information together so that the people can use this information as a data hub to integrate other thematical data to do analyze their use cases and to get into right decisions. Another important data that we have is lane model. What is lane model? It's a digital representation of road spaces with all of the traffic rules. It's quite important for different planning scenarios, so we use this for the supporting different planning and also for diverse road space simulation, traffic simulation, but very importantly for documenting what's the current situation, what's going to happen, so testing different scenarios, and also to document all the changes through the time, and very importantly this automated driving, which is quite the center of this model that we are developing. of course, we are talking about digital twin, who can not talk about the sensor data, dynamic data. Although I've learned that it shouldn't be always real-time data. We should really see sometimes the word time data are also sufficient that we use. In Digital Twin Munich project, we developed several prototypes using different technologies for developing this sensor data infrastructure for us to understand the pitfalls, the advantages of different solutions, and what we are currently doing in the project Connected Urban Twins is to developing a running and operative sensor data infrastructure for the Digital Twin Munich. I showed some example for these fundamental data. What is quite important that you take away from these examples is that these are not crowdsourced data or the data from Google. These are the data that we are developing based on the requirements that we receive from our partners, from our city departments. And we ensure that these data are with good quality, they are reliable, and they are conform to the data protection regulations that we have in the city. So I mentioned we received in the last 4 or 5 years several use cases from different departments, from different external partners. And I'm going to show only 3 of these examples. And the first one is a nice 3D representation of a street. What we see here is on the left side, the current situation. So if you go now in Lindwurmstraße, you see, okay, there are so many car lanes, there are narrow bicycle lanes, and the idea here is to represent what happens that we widen the bicycle lane, which means narrowing down some of the car lanes or even removing some of them. And these kind of representations, visualizations are quite important when we have public events, when we have citizen engagement events. And we received several feedback saying having such visualizations help people to start the discussion and not always thinking and understanding what's going to be changed. So where are the lines, how wide are these lines, what happens, but rather to really fastly understand, okay, what's going to be changed, and then go into the discussion whether this is good or not, what are the problems that citizens, the public see. And we even received an award, German Bicycle Award in 2020 for the 2nd place for the category of service and communication. The second example use case is my favorite one, the smart info map for construction sites. And you may say this is quite simple. It's a map with some of information about the construction, some period, some kind of like information, semantic information, where is, which type of construction is. But it is not that simple. You should understand what happens on the background. So all of this information you see on one single map are coming from various partners, city departments, external partners, private partners that we have in the city. And just convincing these people to share data, although these data are not sensitive data, but just to change this mindset and say, when you bring all your data together, it generates new added values, and you can also be more innovative when you see all this information, was quite a challenge. We successfully achieved that, and we tried also to define a process in streamlining this kind of integration. So Sarah mentioned that we can't really centralize everything at one place. We are not doing that also here. So every partner has its own data. We just streamline this data so they can be integrated in one single place, and people can also see all the values that can be generated with such information. And those who have the right to work with this data can also have access and use this data for further analysis or use cases. My last use case example is one example from the collaborative work we have with our research partner. It is very, very important for us, not only saying, okay, we as Geodata Service Munich, we know how everything works, we have our own challenges, but we want to stay innovative and to also have the information about the state of art and what can be better than working together with our research partners. And what you see here is a very nice visualization, but on the background, it's a very complicated simulation. So you've seen this lane model, this line information, and all of those not very fancy information. All this information have been used in a complex traffic simulation. It's called SUMO, and the results of these simulations are coupled in this nice 3D model representation, what we see here. And then you are interested in this topic, the colleagues did that. Christoph Beil is also here. You can talk to him and get more information about this work. Okay, I have one last point. I would like to reiterate that the demands should drive the solutions, and this is exactly what we have done in Munich. It is what has brought Digital Twin Munich into success and forward. So I thank you for your patience.